Many grieved after the horrific shooting in Orlando. However, there were a number of pastors and religious leaders throughout the country who actually took it as a moment of celebration because there were dozens, 49 to be specific, people that were slaughtered during this mass shooting. And why are they celebrating? Because the victims were part of the LGBT community. Now, there were numerous members of various religions in the country that spoke in favor of what happened, but I'm going to give you two examples because of just how egregious their statements were. The first pastor was Sacramento pastor Roger Jimenez. He said, "Are you sad that 50 pedophiles were killed today? No, I think that's great. I think that helps society. I think Orlando, Florida is a little safer tonight." And he also said, "I wish the government would round them all up, put them against a wall, put a firing squad in front of them and blow their brains out." Okay. So look, we have conversations about fundamentalists quite a bit on the show, right? And for some reason, there's a portion of the country that believes that fundamentalists are only part of Islam. They're only part of the Muslim religion. There are fundamentalists in every religion. Now, in terms of those who carry out acts of violence, you might argue, well, it's only the Muslim fundamentalists that carry out acts of violence, except we had a shooter in Planned Parenthood who identified as a Christian. And so fundamentalists of all religions are incredibly destructive to society. And when you have a religious leader advocating for the slaughter of people just because they're part of the LGBT community, you have to wonder why we allow for that kind of thought. You know, why these types of people have the followers that they have. Because this is the kind of stuff that leads unstable people to go out and carry out acts of violence.
That's exactly right. And I think this boils my blood more than anything else, is that to hear this pastor or anyone who is using religion as their crutch, as like their guise to be able to condemn other people for living immoral lifestyles, to condemn the LGBT community, when they are the most immoral, when they are the ones spewing this hatred, wishing death upon other people because of their sheer ignorance. And I think it underscores that fact that when you are ignorant, that is going to lead to hate, that is going to lead to intolerance. When you come from a place of knowledge and empathy, guess what? That inspires tolerance.
Yeah.
So why can't we teach that? Why can't we focus on that? And then he's a piece of shit. This guy is a piece of shit.
He's a piece of shit. And, you know, we just had a long discussion about the Orlando shooter and how he was closeted himself. And I have no doubt that someone who spews this type of hatred toward the gay community is questioning his own sexuality, to say the least, right? Because, again, if you're comfortable with your sexuality, why does it matter so much if there are two women or two men that love one another?
Or love. You said the word love.
Yeah, exactly.
Love one another.
So I'm going to take it a step further and tell you and just say, what is the difference between these ignorant pastors and, you know, these Islamic radicals or ISIS people that want to wipe out, you know, the Christian race and other people? Like, they're on the same level as some of these radicals that, in every standpoint, you can look at the Klan, you can look at, you know, ISIS and all these other, you know, radical groups that are denounced, but this to me is the same speech
For some
that
reason,
I would be hearing from everyone else, but it's not getting the same
it's not getting
respect
the
or
same pushback,
the same
which is
pushback
interesting. I don't know why that is, but why? Okay, so I'll give you another example, right? Oftentimes there'll be debates about which religious doctrine is the most violent. And so people will talk about how Islam, you know, if you take the literal interpretation of the doctrine, the Quran, you see how violent and crazy it is. Well, let's take a look at another preacher, Arizona preacher Stephen Anderson, talking about the Orlando shooting and talking about what the Bible specifically says. Take a look.
You know, the good news is that there's 50 less pedophiles in this world because, you know, these homosexuals are a bunch of disgusting perverts and pedophiles. That's who was a victim here, are a bunch of just disgusting homosexuals at a gay bar, okay? But the bad news is that this is now going to be used, I'm sure, to push for gun control where, you know, law-abiding normal Americans are not going to be allowed to have guns, that homosexuals should be put to death in Leviticus 20:13. Obviously, it's not right for somebody to just, you know, shoot up the place because that's not going through the proper channels. But these people all should have been killed anyway, but they should have been killed through the proper channels, as in they should have been executed by a righteous government that would have, tried them, convicted them, and saw them executed. Because in Leviticus 20:13, God's perfect law, he put the death penalty on murder, and he also put the death penalty on homosexuality. That's what the Bible says.
Wow.
I didn't say that. He said that. Okay, he is a preacher in Arizona. He just said that. He talked about his own religious doctrine. And so again, I just want to emphasize, this is not to say, Christians are worse than Muslims or Muslims are worse than Christians. Fundamentalists of all religions are dangerous people. When you're advocating hate, when you're inciting violence and death, you are a bad person. It doesn't matter what your religious doctrine says, okay? If you're interpreting it in a literal sense, you're a dangerous person. And that man is a dangerous person.
Yeah, I don't want him owning a gun. I hope he doesn't own any guns.
But these are men of God. I guarantee you they own guns.
Right.
Guarantee.
So let me add one more thing to this though, right? Because while fundamentalists are terrible people, there are individuals in every religion that are good people, right? Catholic religion is an example of that. So I'm not touching Muslim religion so people don't get all crazy about it, right? But there was a bishop, a Catholic bishop by the name of Robert Lynch, who responded to these priests and preachers who came out celebrating the fact that 49 people died. And what he said was incredible, and I absolutely love him for it, okay? This is an example of a good religious person. He says, sadly, it is religion, including our own, which targets mostly verbally and also often breeds contempt for gays, lesbians, and transgender people. Attacks today on LGBT men and women often plant the seed of contempt and then hatred, which can ultimately lead to violence. He continues, while deranged people do senseless things, all of us deserve, judge, and act from some kind of religious background. Singling out people for victimization because of their religion, their sexual orientation, their nationality must be offensive to God's ears. It also has to stop.
Yeah.
So happy that you ended with that. So happy to hear that.
It's in the Bible that says love one another.
Yeah.
You can't judge.
Right.
You judge yourself.
But they'll pick
of course.
certain parts of the Bible.
You take pieces of it. You adapt it to what you want to put out in the message that you want to perceive to your persons in those churches. The guy looked like an idiot himself.
Yeah. How embarrassing
go out there and slap him?
To go out there and spew that kind of hate, to talk about how you think people should be rounded up and executed for doing what?
But he's so delusional. Did you see how his chest was puffed? He's so strong in his conviction that he walks around and he thinks that he is right. And that's what pisses me off. Why can't I just laugh at it and go, he's so ignorant, he's clearly delusional, he needs help. I wish I could go up to him and be like, I'll pray for you. Because to them, that's like the worst insult that you could say. Yeah. But I wish it didn't bother me because I know the repercussions. This hate speech does influence people. Yeah. And it does have, we just saw, it does have action and there are consequences and innocent people will pay. So.
The sad thing is that these two preachers, there are more people that think this way. And that's the audience that they're speaking to. And that's who they're inciting. Right. And that's where the violence is going to end up coming from because of guys like this. Again, it's the same as, radicals in any other religion and fundamentalists. There's no blurred line. There's no difference. That this is exactly what we talk about. We hate what we see on YouTube and live streams from, what goes on outside of our country, but inside of our country, we have our own version of it.